Hi, and welcome to Epiphanies. I'm Reverend Jessie Brandon. I'm a life cycle celebrant and an ordained metaphysical minister. And I get to bring my two loves together on this show, Epiphanies. I have books and people. So I invite you to sit back, kick off your shoes, grab a cup of tea, and let's see where we go with this. Today we'll be talking about a book by the name of A Failure of Nerve, and it's by Edwin Friedman. And we're doing it digitally because that's my guest has the book on digital, and the library doesn't have this particular one. So it's Leadership in the Age of the Quick Fix. And one of the most insightful leadership books I've read in the past few years. And it says about the author that he served for 20 years as a pulpit rabbi and for 25 years as an organizational consultant and family therapist in the Washington area. So he served in the Lyndon Johnson administration, and it was a unique experience that allowed him to observe leadership and its problems in the family, the church, and the political sphere. So the thesis of the book is that the real problem of leadership is a failure of nerve. Leaders fail not because they lack information, skill, or technique, but because they lack the nerve and presence to stand firm in the midst of other people's emotional anxiety and reactivity. So his understanding of leadership hinges on the idea of emotional process. Every family and every institution has an implicit emotional, reactional, relational environment and a way of operating within that environment. Good leadership has less to do with skill, data, technique, or knowledge, and more to do with the leader's ability to discern and navigate the emotional and relational climate of a family or an organization. So to talk about this further, I'm going to invite my guest on. Today I have Dana Pharant, the inner Dominatrix. Dana, come on in. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Jessie. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Please, I'm going to read your bio while you get comfortable and make yourself a cup of tea there. Okay. So, Dana's bio. This is really interesting. She is a master healer and a life strategist, a former dominatrix, and Dana helps people to reclaim their authentic confidence and higher consciousness to live a life that is bold, sexy, and fun-filled. So, Dana, tell me about this book. Why did you choose this book?
This book it's actually a recent find of mine. And for me, it's this epitome of all the stuff that I've been talking about for years. And you know, I'm bold, I'm out there, I'm saying things that most people are not talking about. And so it was so nice to have this academic who has researched things extensively and to be reading it in this, very studied academic format that lines up so well with what I've been seeing and knowing intuitively. So for me, that was very exciting. And so many books, we've lost language, right? You're a book lover. This book is like so juicy for the language in there, the words. I've had to look up all kinds of words as I've been reading it. So it's been really, it's like feeds the soul at the same time, the academic soul.
Cool, very cool. So when did you discover this book?
So this was at the beginning of this year, actually. A friend that I've made through podcasting he recommended, he said, oh my God, you've got to read this. This is like you to a T. And of course I picked up the book and I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal, like so well done.
Okay, and it's on digital rather than hard copy.
I purchased digital because I'm a bit of a geek as far as tech geek. And I love, I just love being able to I've got, 300 books. And I carry one piece with me, right? So I take my library with me wherever I go. That's my piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you passed on that favor and recommended that book to anyone else?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it's not something I would have ever picked up.
Yeah. Oh, I know. As I was reading it, I was constantly sharing little snippets and clips for people because I'm like, oh my God, this is great. It's such a great way to get people to think and start looking at the world, looking at how do we interact, how do we lead, and to think differently, because there's so much going on in the world right now where people are talking about we need to, have empathy for everyone. We need to be empathetic. We need to, cater and pander and all those things. And I'm not sure that that's really getting us what we need. Like, are we actually furthering our society by being so empathetic? Because I think people are afraid to take leadership because they're afraid of being sued.
Yeah. They don't want to, they have to be politically correct. They don't want anybody to be upset. They don't want hurt feelings. And that's not leadership.
It's not. Leadership requires us to actually step up and look at, okay, where do we want to go? And it's not necessarily going to be the most comfortable thing. And so even though you're uncomfortable with the change, I'm going to stand in the leadership that this is the good of the entire organization or church or family, that this is what needs to be done.
Yeah, and that reminds me, when I worked for the police department way back in the 80s, I was in Toronto on dispatch, and we switched from handwritten tickets to computers, and everybody was like, oh, this is never going to work, and oh, this is terrible, and we can't use this. And they came out and said to us, there's been a study done on things that change, and it takes 6 months for people to get used to change. So be prepared to be uncomfortable for the next 6 months.
Right.
And I think that's what you have to say is, this is the direction we're going. And, we're all going to go together. It's not going to be fun,
right?
But it's going to be great.
Yeah, because in that instance, had the leaders, pandered to everybody going, then everybody would still be doing handwritten tickets and it'd be completely inefficient. But by pushing forward and saying, you know what, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. I recognize that. We don't dismiss people in doing this, but in saying, I recognize it and buckle up because this is where we're going.
Yeah. Absolutely. Is there a particular quote that you enjoyed or a piece that you want to read for us?
There's one little snippet in here that I think kind of highlights, where he comes from with this. I have just short quotes. Chronic anxiety might be compared to the volatile atmosphere of a room filled with gas fumes. Any sparking incident could set off a conflagration, yet rather than trying to disperse the fumes, people blame the person who struck the match.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
That is really, like you say, juicy. Yeah, because if you really dig down and think about that, yeah, it's not the person who struck the match.
And yet that's what's going on. You look at what's going on in our society, and even, Facebook, oh my goodness, is a great place to see that. Somebody says something, and then everybody just like,
yeah,
as if that's the person that struck the match. And it's like, that's not what's going on. We need to pull back, be able to differentiate and really, get away from that anxiety and see what's actually going on.
Right. Yes, because it's that old saying, it's principles above personalities. So when we, jump on the person who, said it on Facebook or struck the match, then we're missing the point, which is the principle of, we have to change things to move forward, to make things better.
Yeah.
So tell me some more.
Okay. So let me find another, he talks a lot about the whole information is not going to help us move forward. And I'm just trying to see if I can find that.
Okay, so information is not going to move us forward.
Well, so we have at our fingertips, we have a plethora of information. And he gave a great example how, let's say a doctor, if a doctor wants to stay current, there is the equivalent of 200 papers being published a month that they would need to be current on. So even if the doctor, had the time to read 2 a week, right? Because, that takes time and they're busy people. Even if they read 2 a week, every week they're getting further behind. Because every week there's another 50 or more articles being published so you're always behind. So it's not a matter of having more information. And if information could solve anything, Google would have solved all of our problems.
Yay, Mr. Google.
Yay, Google. But it's not that. It's about us actually being able to stop and look at what's really going on instead of trying to cram more information in, more data in. We've got to pull back and take a look at, who are we as individuals? How do we, really connect with that self piece, as well as looking at the whole.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so being misled into thinking that we just need more information. We need, another strategy, another implementation. And I say this all the time. People are always in search of, I need another strategy, right? They run around going, and yet it's like, wait, pull back. What's going on here?
Exactly.
And that's a big part of what he says is let's look at here, the leadership of self, before you start trying to go out in the world.
Okay, so can you expand on leadership of self? Tell me what he means or what you mean by that.
Yeah, and this is where I align with him, is that it's about getting out of the being flared up by all the emotions, and he calls it chronic anxiety. We see that in the world, right? People are constantly flared up at the least little thing. If we don't get reactionary, if we don't get triggered by that stuff, right? And this is my big thing.
Yeah.
It's like, let's change what's going on here so we're not triggered. And then we're able to step back and have a bird's eye view, both of ourselves and of the whole system, whether it's our organization, our government, the church, our family, whatever it is, to be able to actually stand in ourselves without that reactionary response.
Right. So, to encapsulate all of that,
Oh my
and
goodness.
yeah, I know, and the book, what recommendation would you want to leave our viewers with? What do you want them to know? Why should they pick up this book?
The book is mostly an academic, theoretic look at what's going on. I think it's good information, and I love the fact that he challenges a lot of people's viewpoints on things, because he's willing to just say, you know what, that's not working. Us pandering to the Black Lives Matters and that kind of thing, he doesn't say Black Lives Matter because that wasn't available 10 years ago, but if we start pandering to that group, then what we're creating is a system where we're always pandering to the noisiest group.
Yes.
And so he says, no, we need to stand firm and say, no, that it's about the collective. And I think individually, we need to do the internal work so that we don't take on other people's judgments, we don't take on their viewpoints of us, get clear, right? And so that's that expanding out that I always talk about.
Yeah.
So if you expand out so much that all that other stuff can fall off of you, now you have a completely fresh perspective to stand in,
Right.
and you can make a different choice.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go to break, but I want to come back to that expand out because, as you know, I've kind of formed a little physical thing that I do when I talk about your expand out. So just a moment here. We're going to take a quick break, and you're watching Epiphanies. I invite you to come back and listen to some more of what Dana has to say, both about the book and about what she does in the community. Stay with us, and we'll see you in a minute. Hi, and welcome back to Epiphanies. Thanks for coming back. We've got some more interesting conversation with my guest here today, Dana Pharant. We were discussing the book A Failure of Nerve by Edwin Friedman, but we're going to go on to who Dana is in our community. So Dana, I read your bio. Tell me a little bit about what you do, and then tell me what a master strategist is.
So it's a master healer life strategist.
Okay.
I know it's a long title to to get there. Basically, what I'm working with people at the core of it is about inviting people to really step into what I call a higher level consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is getting to a space where you don't have a judgment of you or anyone else. So nothing that goes on is right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And the value of that is that if nothing's right or wrong, you can't get tripped up by other people. If other people want to judge you, it's like you just have a lot of space around it and you have a lot of ease around it because there's nothing wrong with them judging you. Mm-hmm. And it's a foreign concept for some people, like to think in terms of if I would say that there's nothing wrong with anything in the world, right? A lot of people get triggered because they'll be like, well, what about, and they'll list off, 100 things that they think are seriously wrong. And it's not that we don't ever try to change things, but what if we could change things more by not having a fight for it, by not being locked in to that, right? To have choice, to make it that it's like, hey, what if? Yeah. What if we, started seeing everybody as every life matters? What if we allowed our bathrooms to be gender neutral, right? What if, as opposed to, having to fight for it? And that's really what it is for me, is to invite people to that space of really high level consciousness so that they have ease in their life and in their bodies.
Yeah. And it's so true what you're saying, because it's one of the things that I recently became aware of because of you, is the people fighting for peace. Well, isn't that almost an oxymoron?
It is. Like, that's going to work. We don't want to have wars, but we're going to fight for peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so that, just extrapolate that out to everything. If you're fighting for it, then there's a win-lose to that.
Exactly.
Why not go for a win-win? Right. And it's absolutely amazing to me, because as I adopted that way of thinking, it doesn't matter to me what people say or how they feel about things that I'm doing, because I'm the only one in control of my life. Yeah. And as long as what I'm doing, my intention is to be good and to do good in the world and to take care of my own stuff and be a better person, then your objections are your own.
Yeah, and I've watched your life change and take off as a result. You're much happier. Like, look at this, you got a TV show.
I know.
Right? Things are changing, they're evolving.
Yeah.
Without that fighting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And as I said before the break, you talked about expand out. Please describe that for our viewers, because I absolutely love that. I've used it.
Thanks. I love it too.
Many times.
Yeah. So what we're expanding is our energy field. And for some people, they have a hard time imagining it, but just pretend that they can get it. So you're gonna take your energy field and you want to just let it go out. And first of all, you're gonna go as big as the room in all directions, right? All directions. And then we're just gonna keep going out from that. Go as big as a world, as big as a solar system. And if people get kind of stuck, then I love to just throw in a question. It's like, what would it feel like if you were as big as the galaxy? Yeah. And what would it feel like if you were as big as the universe, right? And to just keep letting that go out. And what would it feel like if you were as big as infinite space? Yeah. Sorry. And so when you let yourself expand out that much, there's nowhere for other people's stuff to stick to you. There's nowhere for it to impact your body, and it can just drop off. Yeah. So that's the beauty of that one.
And I was thinking, because, I've been going to retreats and different things for, I can't even tell you, over 20 years, learning different things from different people. Exactly. And, as you go along, each piece works. And so I always remember one that I went to where the guy said that he just envisions himself in this bubble, and so that everybody's stuff just hits the wall and and drops to the floor. Well, the thing of it is, if your bubble drops, or what is permeable, then that it comes in. It's not gone. It's there on the floor. And what I loved about what you say is just to expand it. Nothing can stick to the wind. So when I've told people about you and about expanding it, I'll just say, be the wind, because I'm always going for the laugh, right? But people get that because they think, okay, it just blows through you. It can't stick to you. And that's a really lovely concept. I like that very much.
And it's, to expand on that for your viewers, is the difference between being the wind and the wall. And so to me, like, I did that whole shield and bubble, and I do the waterfalls, and I'd be cleansing, and it takes a lot of energy to maintain that. So you're kind of like making yourself a wall. Well, if we imagine other people's stuff and their energy as Post-it notes, right?
Yes.
You can stick a lot of Post-it notes on the wall, but if you're the wind, nay, a single Post-it note.
Yeah. And yesterday I was at a meeting of people, and one of the women there kept saying that every person she knew, and she herself and so forth, were under psychic attack. And I thought, yeah, then you're putting yourself in a war zone.
You make yourself a victim.
Yeah.
Immediately you make yourself a victim, because you think, oh, I'm under attack. That means I have no control over that. You have a lot of control over it. You have complete control of how you react to it.
Absolutely.
And nobody can psychically attack you unless you allow them. My point of view.
True. I tend to believe it myself. I'm moving further away from labeling things too, because that too puts you in a box. But that's how I felt when she was saying it. Was like, no, let yourself go. Don't say those words.
Yeah.
Not my business. We've all got our journey to make. But I just thought, no, let it be the wind. Just let it flow through you. Because
but a lot of people are really attached to holding on to some sort of victim status. That it's not my fault, it's out of my control, and so therefore I don't have to do anything about it.
Right, absolutely.
Right? And I know some people are not going to like to hear that, but if we turn it around and we stop buying into this idea of psychic attacks and stop buying into, there are entities that are affecting us, and I use some of that model with what I teach, but I use it to facilitate people to realize that it's not something they can't control. Like, it is something that they have complete, effect of.
Yes, and choice.
Choice.
Choice is my favorite word, because everything is a choice. The way you face the world when you get up in the morning, the way you make choices about everything that you're going to do.
Yeah.
There's an old Dalai Lama statement that I never get quite right, but when you have to make a decision, he says, look at it in all ways. So if you do this thing, how will you feel? And how will you feel about that? And if you don't do this thing, how will you feel? And how will you feel about that? And it's just, it sounds
lovely.
like, yeah, it really is.
Well, it puts you into that perspective mode, right? You're pulling back.
Yeah.
I love the one, I teach this all the time to people, is to say, to check into how does it feel energetically? To say, what would my life be like in 5 years if I choose A? And you just kind of get a read on the energy, versus what would my life be like in 5 years if I choose B? And then you just, make the commitment to follow whatever one is lighter, because that's what's going to be in alignment for you.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's the same as when I didn't go to university until I was 45. And I said to somebody, but I'm going to be 45 in university. And they said, well, what are you going to be if you're not in university? Oh, still 45. Okay, I get that. Yeah, so it's just a more expansive way of that very thing, How does this feel? And, I truly invite you to get in touch with Dana about what she does, because it'll just open up your world to see how free you really are, and to see how to make choices and how they feel, because that's really what matters, is how it feels energetically within you, light or dark, heavy or light, all those words to tell you how you're feeling, and then what's working for you. So we're coming down to the last few minutes, and I want to know, Can you tell us a little bit about the Inner Dominatrix? I love that group. That is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm spinning off of my background and my time as a dominatrix, and using those stories to get people to, to learn how to run their businesses more effectively. So, and it seems like a strange archetype, but basically for me, the dominatrix is a strong feminine personality that is very client-centered, because it's all about the client. And you have to be extremely present and connected and aware in the moment. And so those skills, along with high-level confidence, obviously, are so valuable as a business owner. And that's always my sweet spot for targeting.
Yeah.
Right? But you need to be confident to ask for the sale. You need to be, standing in your presence, so you're focused, so that you're doing what most needs to be done, not running, right? And to be client-centered is really key.
Right. Okay, I just want to tell my audience that they are most welcome to email me at jessie@jessiebrandon.ca with any questions about the book we've reviewed today, my guest Dana Pharant, and or anything that we've talked about. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll address those in future shows. Dana, tell me what you want your legacy to be.
I want people to be really comfortable with who they are exactly as they are.
That's lovely. That's absolutely lovely. Dana, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come to my show.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching. And it's Epiphanies, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Love to have you join me. And let's see who we interview next and what book we're going to look at. Thanks so much for coming.